They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but what they don't tell you is how satisfying it feels to watch someone's entire world crumble when they realize they've been playing a game where all the rules were stacked against them from the very beginning. My wife spent 5 years believing she'd married a millionaire. She planned her betrayal down to the last detail, convinced she'd walk away with half of everything and disappear into the sunset with her lover. She had no idea that the fortune she was counting on existed only in her imagination, and that I'd been orchestrating her downfall since the day she signed a prenuptial agreement she never bothered to read. Some people marry for love, others marry for money. But when you marry a lie and try to steal what was never there, you discover that the only thing waiting for you at the end is the cold, hard truth about who you really are. My name is Michael Hayes. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a senior project manager at Hayes Property Development. On paper, I make $85,000 a year, decent money, but nothing extraordinary. What my wife, Vanessa, doesn't know is that my mother, Catherine Hayes, owns the company. And every luxury we enjoy, every comfort she's grown accustomed to, none of it belongs to me. I remember our wedding day 5 years ago like it was yesterday. Vanessa was 24 then, beautiful in that effortless way that made heads turn when she walked into a room. She worked in marketing for a small firm downtown, ambitious and sharp. I was cautiously optimistic about our future together. Before the ceremony, my attorney presented her with a prenuptial agreement, 50 pages of dense legal language that my mother had insisted upon. I watched Vanessa skim through those pages, her manicured finger trailing down paragraphs about asset division and property rights. She smiled, laughed even, and signed her name with a flourish within 20 minutes. She never asked questions, never consulted her own lawyer despite having 30 days to do so, never questioned what those carefully worded clauses meant for our future. That's when I saw it, the first glimpse of who she really was. She wasn't marrying Michael Hayes, the man. She was marrying the lifestyle she thought came with him. Our current life is a masterpiece of illusion. We live in an 8,000 square foot estate with marble floors that echo when you walk across them, and a chef's kitchen that Vanessa has never used for anything more than reheating takeout. The 4-car garage houses a Range Rover, Mercedes, Porsche, and a vintage Aston Martin, each one worth more than most people's homes. We have country club memberships, designer shopping sprees, lavish vacations to the Maldives and Monaco. Vanessa quit her marketing job 2 years into our marriage, claiming she wanted to support me better at home. In reality, she spends her days at spin classes with women who measure their worth in handbag brands, brunches that last 3 hours and accomplish nothing, and curating her Instagram feed to showcase a life of perpetual luxury. Her followers eat it up. 15,000 people who believe she's living the dream. But here's the truth that would shatter her perfect world. None of it is mine. The house at 1247 Oakmont Drive, Catherine's name is on the deed. The cars in our garage, all registered to my mother. Even the furniture, those Italian leather sofas, the crystal chandeliers, the antique dining set, was selected and purchased by Catherine. My $85,000 salary has been stretched thinner than tissue paper maintaining Vanessa's expectations. Designer handbags that cost $3,000 each. Spa days that run $800 for a single afternoon. Weekly shopping trips where she drops $2,000 on clothes she'll wear once. I've been living paycheck to paycheck, borrowing from my mother occasionally when the illusion becomes too expensive to maintain. Meanwhile, Vanessa believes we're worth millions. She's never seen our actual bank statements, never questioned where the money comes from, never cared enough to ask. I could have told her the truth at any point. Could have sat her down and explained that the life she loves is built on my mother's generosity, not my success. But I wanted to see who she really was. I gave her 5 years to ask questions, to care about me instead of what surrounded me, to love the man rather than the mansion. She never did. Lately, things have changed in ways that make my skin crawl. Vanessa has grown cold, distant in a way that feels calculated. She complains that our town is boring, that our friends are beneath her. She's always on her phone now, smiling at texts she angles away from me when I enter the room. She dresses up for errands and returns hours later empty-handed, her lipstick gone and her hair slightly mussed in a way that makeup can't quite fix. I don't confront her. Not yet. I watch. I wait. I catalog every lie, every excuse, every moment she thinks I'm too stupid to notice. The thing about being underestimated is that it gives you incredible power. While she thinks she's being clever, I've been planning. 3 nights ago at dinner, her phone buzzed constantly against the marble table. She excused herself quickly, claiming it was her trainer confirming tomorrow's session. But I caught a glimpse of the contact name before she snatched the device away. DS. Not her trainer's name. Not anyone I recognize. My suspicion crystallized into cold, hard certainty in that moment. She's having an affair. She's been playing house with my mother's money while planning her exit strategy with another man. She thinks she's going to take half of everything and run into the sunset with her lover, leaving me broken and empty-handed. She has no idea I've been 10 steps ahead since the day we met. And when she finally asks for a divorce, I'll give her exactly what she deserves. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from watching someone you love stop pretending to love you back. It's like watching a movie of your own life where the other person forgot they were supposed to be acting. Over the past 6 months, Vanessa's transformation has been gradual but unmistakable. She used to at least fake interest in my day, asking about projects at work or nodding along when I talked about weekend plans. Now she barely looks up from her phone during dinner. Her responses reduced to distracted mm-hms, and that's nice, honey. The signs have been accumulating like evidence in a case I never wanted to build. She started wearing a new perfume 3 months ago. Expensive and musky, nothing like the light floral scent I bought her for our anniversary. When I complimented it, she claimed it was something she'd picked up at the mall, she replied dismissively. But I've never seen a receipt, never seen the bottle. It's the kind of scent a man would choose for a woman, heavy with intention. Her fitness obsession began around the same time. Not the casual gym visits she used to do, but an intense, almost manic dedication to her appearance. She works out twice a day now, morning spin classes and evening personal training sessions that seem to energize her in ways I haven't seen in years. But this isn't about health or self-care. This is about someone else's gaze, someone else's approval. The way she checks herself in every reflection. The new lingerie I glimpse in the laundry. The way she holds her stomach in even when she thinks no one is watching. It's all for him. Her errands have grown longer and more frequent. What used to be quick trips to the grocery store or dry cleaner now stretch into 3- and 4-hour disappearances. She comes home flushed, her makeup reapplied but not quite perfect, her hair slightly disheveled despite claiming she spent the afternoon shopping. The shopping bags she brings home never match the time she was gone. 2 hours at the mall yielding a single candle. 4 hours running quick errands with nothing to show for it but empty hands and guilt in her eyes. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone buzzed on the counter beside me. The screen lit up with a text from DS. Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're incredible. I stared at those words, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Before I could process what I was seeing, Vanessa appeared in the doorway, her face shifting from casual to defensive in an instant. Don't touch my phone. Michael! She snapped, her voice sharp and possessive. That's private. I held up my hands in mock surrender. Sorry, it was just sitting there when it buzzed. I wasn't snooping, I replied calmly. She snatched the device away, clutching it against her chest like a secret. Just don't, okay? She said, her tone brooking no argument. I apologized again, keeping my voice level and understanding. But inside, something hardened into crystal-clear resolve. That night, while she slept with her phone clutched in her hand even in dreams, I began my quiet investigation. Phone records were easy enough to access. We shared a family plan, and I was the primary account holder. Dozens of calls to the same unknown number over the past 3 months, conversations lasting 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes. Text messages sent and received at all hours, including times when she was supposedly sleeping beside me. The GPS tracker was a harder decision. I installed it on her Range Rover one evening while she was at her book club, a meeting that, according to her friend Amanda, she hadn't attended in weeks. The device was small, magnetic, and legally defensible since the vehicle was registered to my mother's company, not to Vanessa personally. Within a week, I had her patterns mapped out. Twice a week, she drove to the same upscale apartment complex across town, staying for 2 to 3 hours each visit. The timing was always precise, never during my lunch break, never when I might come home early, never when she couldn't account for her whereabouts with a plausible excuse. I hired a private investigator named Thomas Crane, a former police detective with tired eyes and a reputation for discretion. I found him through a lawyer friend who'd used his services in a messy custody case. Thomas was expensive, but thorough. The kind of man who understood that some marriages die in shadows and needed someone to document the death. Within a week, Thomas delivered what I already knew but needed to prove. Photographs. Vanessa entering the luxury apartment building at 2247 Riverside Drive. A tall, handsome man greeting her at the door, his hand already reaching for her waist. Intimate embraces in the doorway that lasted too long to be friendly. Her leaving hours later with disheveled clothing and satisfied exhaustion written across her face. The man's name was Derek Sutton, 37 years old, a real estate investor with a flashy reputation and expensive tastes. He drove a black Maserati, lived in the penthouse, and according to Thomas's research, had a history of targeting married women with wealthy husbands. His social media was carefully curated to showcase luxury. Wine tastings in Napa, ski trips to Aspen, dinners at restaurants where appetizers cost more than some people's weekly groceries. Thomas also provided something more valuable than photographs, recorded conversations. With Vanessa's permission, Derek had been making promises. Promises of a better life. European vacations, a penthouse downtown, freedom from boring suburban existence. But the most damning recording was Derek's voice describing his research into my financial situation. His excitement about what Vanessa would be worth after our divorce. "She thinks he's loaded," Derek's voice crackled through the tiny speaker during our meeting. "Property development, big house, fancy cars. She'll walk away with millions. We could buy that place in Barcelona, maybe get a yacht." They were both planning a future funded by money that didn't exist. I met with my attorney, Richard Moss, the following Monday. Richard was my mother's lawyer first, a sharp-dressed man with cold eyes and a reputation for destroying opposing counsel. His office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of place where bad news got delivered with expensive scotch and no sympathy. Richard reviewed the prenuptial agreement with the enthusiasm of a chess master studying a winning position. "She signed away everything," he said, running his finger down the relevant clauses. "Community property, alimony, asset division. She waived it all. She gets nothing but what you choose to give her, and legally, that's as little as $500. I nodded slowly, feeling pieces click into place. "I want it airtight. No loopholes, no sympathy from a judge," I told him firmly. "It will be," Richard assured me. "But Michael, you should know. This kind of settlement will destroy her. Financially, socially, completely. Are you prepared for that?" he asked, his tone serious. I thought about the text messages, the lies, the way she looked at me now like I was an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to love. She made her choice. "Now she'll live with the consequences," I answered without hesitation. But I didn't stop there. That evening, I made a call to an old friend, Dylan Murphy. We'd served together briefly in the military before Dylan went private sector, handling problems for people who could afford discretion. Dylan owed me a favor from years ago, something involving a situation that could have ruined his life. I'd kept that secret, never asked for anything in return, until now. I didn't give Dylan details over the phone, just told him to be ready, that I might need assistance with a problem that required a permanent solution. "I'll be ready," he replied simply, his voice steady when he agreed, no questions asked. Some debts run deeper than money. That night I lay awake while Vanessa slept beside me, her phone clutched in her hand even in unconsciousness. I felt nothing but cold clarity settling into my bones. She married me for what she thought I had. She was planning to leave me for what she thought she could take. And when she finally made her move, I would hand her an empty box and watch her perfect world collapse into nothing. I received Thomas's final report the next morning. Derek had been researching me online, trying to estimate my net worth based on our lifestyle and my mother's company. His best guess put me somewhere between $10 and $15 million. Derek and Vanessa were both planning their golden future on a foundation that existed only in their greedy imaginations. I whispered to myself as I deleted the email. They're both in for the shock of their lives. The moment finally arrived on a Tuesday evening in early October. I came home from work to find Vanessa waiting in the living room like a defendant prepared to deliver her verdict. She was dressed immaculately, hair professionally styled, makeup flawless, wearing the black cocktail dress I'd bought her for our 3rd anniversary. The irony of her using my gift as armor for her betrayal wasn't lost on me. "We need to talk," she said, and I recognized the tone immediately. Rehearsed, confident, final. I set down my briefcase slowly, deliberately maintaining the calm demeanor I'd perfected over months of preparation. "I'm listening," I replied evenly. Vanessa didn't ease into it with excuses or gentle explanations. She delivered her blow with surgical precision. "I'm not happy anymore, Michael." "I haven't been for a while," she announced, crossing her arms defensively but emboldened by what she believed was her upper hand. "I've met someone else. Someone who actually excites me. Someone who makes me feel alive again." I kept my expression neutral, almost curious, like she was describing the weather rather than detonating our marriage. "Who is he?" I asked simply. "His name is Derek Sutton," she replied like a challenge, watching my face for cracks in my composure. "He's a real estate investor, actually successful, not just coasting on his family's name." The insult was intentional, designed to hurt, to make me react with anger or pain. Instead, I absorbed it without flinching. "How long?" I inquired calmly. 3 months, she answered almost proudly, like she'd accomplished something remarkable. "We met at the country club. He pursued me, Michael. He made me feel wanted, something you haven't done in years." The accusation hung in the air between us, another carefully aimed attack. But I'd moved beyond hurt feelings months ago. "And what do you want from me?" I asked directly. Vanessa slid a business card across the coffee table with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. "A divorce. My lawyer's already drawn up papers. I want this done quickly and fairly. 50-50. I think that's more than reasonable, considering I gave up my career for you," she stated matter-of-factly. I picked up the card, Janet Pierce, family law attorney, and studied it as if I were genuinely considering her proposal. The plastic felt light in my fingers, weightless compared to the legal documents Richard Moss had prepared for this exact moment. Then I did something that clearly surprised her. I nodded in apparent acceptance. "If that's what you want, I won't fight you," I said calmly. Vanessa blinked, her confidence wavering for just a moment. She'd expected anger, pleading, desperate attempts to save our marriage. My calm agreement wasn't part of her script. "Really?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Really," I confirmed, standing and moving to the bar cart to pour myself a drink. The crystal decanter caught the light as I poured 2 fingers of whiskey, my movements unhurried and controlled. "But I need one thing from you first." "What?" she asked, the single word carrying a hint of wariness. "Tell me everything about Derek. Where he works, where he lives, how you met. If you're leaving me for him, I want to know who he is," I explained reasonably. Vanessa, emboldened by my apparent cooperation and eager to justify her choices, told me everything. The information spilled out of her like a confession she'd been waiting months to make. "Derek lives in the Riverside Towers, Unit 2407. He drives a black Maserati that makes heads turn when he pulls into the country club. He works independently, flipping high-end properties with money. Inherited from his grandfather's shipping business," she began. Enthusiastically, she described their first meeting in detail, how he'd approached her during lunch at the club while I was at work, how charming and bold he'd been. "He complimented my dress, bought me champagne, made me laugh in ways you never do anymore," she continued, her voice growing more animated. "He's promised me a penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows, trips to Paris and Barcelona, a life of excitement and passion that I deserve." I listened carefully, memorizing every detail while maintaining my mask of resigned acceptance. The address, the vehicle description, his business patterns, his promises, everything that would matter when the time came to act. "Thank you for being honest," I said when she finished. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours tomorrow." Vanessa actually looked relieved, almost sympathetic. "I hope you find someone better suited for you, Michael. Someone who doesn't need as much as I do," she replied with casual cruelty. The statement, reducing our 5-year marriage to a simple mismatch of needs, should have hurt. Instead, it confirmed everything I'd suspected about who she really was beneath the beautiful surface. After she left the room, I sat in silence for exactly 10 minutes, finishing my whiskey and watching the sun set through our floor-to-ceiling windows. Then I made 2 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Richard Moss. She just asked for the divorce, 50-50 split. She has no idea what's coming, I informed him. Richard's low chuckle came through the line, the sound of a predator scenting blood. "This is going to be beautiful, Michael. Absolutely beautiful," he replied with satisfaction. The second call was to Dylan Murphy. My voice was cold, devoid of emotion as I provided Derek's address, his vehicle description, his routine patterns. "I need that favor." "Tonight," I stated simply. Dylan didn't ask questions. He never did. "Make him disappear?" he asked for clarification. "Clean, no traces, no connections," I confirmed. "Consider it done," he replied, and the line went dead. I sat alone in the house that was never mine, thinking about justice and consequences and the things people do when they believe they can take whatever they want from others. As I prepared for bed, I looked at Derek's photo on my phone, pulled from his carefully curated social media presence, and whispered words that felt like a prayer. "You picked the wrong man's wife." 2 weeks had passed since Vanessa asked for the divorce, and I'd been the picture of cooperation. I signed preliminary paperwork without argument, agreed to mediation schedules, showed no resistance to her demands. Vanessa interpreted my compliance as weakness, maybe even guilt. She walked around the house with the confidence of someone who believed she'd already won. What she didn't know was that Derek Sutton hadn't responded to her text messages in 6 days. The settlement meeting took place on a gray Thursday morning in Richard Moss's downtown office. The conference room was all glass and chrome, designed to intimidate, with harsh fluorescent lighting that made everyone look pale and vulnerable. The view overlooked the city from the 20th floor, a reminder of how far people could fall. Vanessa arrived with her attorney, Janet Pierce, a woman in her 50s who wore ambition like expensive perfume. Janet's reputation preceded her: aggressive, expensive, successful at extracting maximum settlements from unfaithful husbands. Vanessa was dressed for victory. Chanel's suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, Louboutin heels that clicked against the marble floor like a countdown timer, Cartier watch that caught the light every time she moved her wrist. She looked like someone about to collect a fortune. I arrived with Richard, who carried only a thin manila folder. The contrast was deliberate, her team loaded with documents and demands, mine streamlined and confident. We sat across from each other at the polished conference table, and for the first time in weeks, I looked Vanessa directly in the eyes. The contact lasted only seconds before she looked away, perhaps sensing something had changed. Janet began with the confidence of someone who'd played this game 100 times before. "Gentlemen, let's make this simple and amicable. Mrs. Hayes is entitled to 50% of all marital assets under state law. The house, vehicles, joint bank accounts, investment portfolios, retirement funds. We've conducted a preliminary assessment valuing the estate at approximately $8 million, which would entitle Mrs. Hayes to $4 million in the settlement," she announced with professional authority. Vanessa actually smiled, a small, satisfied expression that said everything about what she thought was about to happen. $4 million would buy her penthouse with Derek, fund their European adventures, secure the lifestyle she believed she deserved. Richard Moss didn't even blink. He opened the manila folder with the deliberate slowness of a magician, revealing his final trick. I'm afraid there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about my client's financial situation, he stated calmly. Janet leaned forward, her confidence wavering. Excuse me? She asked sharply. Mr. Hayes owns exactly one asset that was acquired during the marriage, Richard continued, sliding a single document across the polished table like he was serving a death sentence. A storage shed located on rural property approximately 40 miles outside the city. Current appraised value, $800. The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa's face drained of color as if someone had pulled a plug. What? She whispered, disbelief evident in her voice. Richard produced document after document, laying them out like evidence at a crime scene. Each paper was a nail in the coffin of Vanessa's assumptions. The house at 1247 Oakmont Drive, owned by Catherine Hayes, purchased in 1987, never transferred to her son. The vehicles, Range Rover, Mercedes, Porsche, Aston Martin, all registered to Catherine Hayes under her corporate fleet registration. Country club membership, held under Catherine Hayes' corporate account, with Michael Hayes listed as an authorized guest, he recited methodically. That's impossible, Vanessa protested, but her voice cracked like thin ice. Investment accounts, savings accounts, even the furniture in your marital home, Catherine Hayes is the primary holder or owner. Mr. Hayes is merely a listed beneficiary, with no withdrawal rights during his mother's lifetime, Richard continued, his voice clinical and methodical, destroying her world one fact at a time. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping violently against the floor. You lied to me, she accused, pointing a shaking finger at me. I spoke for the first time since entering the room, my voice ice-cold and steady. I never lied. You never asked. You assumed, I replied matter-of-factly. This is fraud, Janet interjected desperately, but even she could hear the weakness in her own voice. Richard tapped the prenuptial agreement with one perfectly manicured finger. Your client signed this document after being given 30 days to review it with independent counsel. Section 7, paragraph 3 clearly states, each party waives all claims to property not jointly titled or explicitly designated as marital property. She chose not to read it. She chose not to consult an attorney. That's not fraud. That's negligence, he explained with legal precision. Mr. Hayes is employed by his mother's company at a salary of $85,000 per year, Richard continued relentlessly. Nearly his entire income over the past 5 years has been spent maintaining the lifestyle Mrs. Hayes demanded. Designer, clothing, spa memberships, vacations, dining at establishments far above his means. He has approximately $4,200 in personal savings. Vanessa's hands were shaking violently now, her perfect mask shattering like glass. Michael, please. I made a mistake. I don't want the divorce anymore. We can work this out. I'll change. I'll be better. Please, she begged, desperation replacing her earlier confidence. The desperation in her voice might have moved me once. Now it just sounded pathetic. No, I said simply, the word final and absolute. You showed me exactly who you are, Vanessa. You didn't marry me. You married what you thought I had. The moment you believed you could take half and run to Derek, you did. At the mention of Derek's name, something flickered across Vanessa's face. Confusion, worry, a shadow of fear. Derek he'll help me. She stammered, grasping for support that wasn't there. Derek is gone, I interrupted quietly, watching her face crumble. Haven't you noticed? He hasn't returned your calls in almost a week. Vanessa pulled out her phone frantically, scrolling through unanswered messages with increasing desperation. Text after text sent into the void, calls that went straight to voicemail. Her face went white as she realized what I already knew. Richard continued with clinical precision. Per state law and the prenuptial agreement, we're offering Mrs. Hayes $500, the legal minimum required to validate the divorce settlement, plus whatever personal belongings she brought into the marriage prior to 2019. That's the final offer. he announced definitively. You can't, Janet started, but Richard cut her off with the efficiency of a blade. We can, and we will. If Mrs. Hayes chooses to contest this in court, we'll present evidence of her adultery, her financial irresponsibility, and her complete lack of contribution to any marital assets. It will be expensive, public, and she'll lose. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad, he stated with absolute certainty. Vanessa collapsed back into her chair, sobbing with the broken sound of someone whose world had just imploded. You bastard! You planned this. You planned all of this, she accused through her tears. I stood, buttoning my suit jacket with deliberate care. No, Vanessa. You planned this when you married me for money instead of love. I just made sure you failed, I replied coldly. How could you be so cruel? She choked out between sobs. I looked down at her. This woman I'd once loved, now reduced to tears and desperation and ugly truth. I learned from the best teacher. You, I answered without emotion, as I walked toward the door. I saw the news alert notification on my phone. Local real estate investor Derek Sutton reported missing by family. I deleted it without reading further, my expression never changing. Behind me, Vanessa's sobs echoed off the glass walls, the sound of dreams dying and consequences arriving exactly on schedule. The divorce was finalized in record time, 17 days from filing to decree. Vanessa received exactly $500 and whatever belongings she could prove were hers before our marriage. Some clothing from her old apartment, a few pieces of costume jewelry from college, photographs from her childhood that suddenly seemed like relics from someone else's life. Everything else stayed behind. I watched her pack 2 suitcases in the master bedroom on a cold November morning, her hands shaking as she folded clothes that cost more than some people's cars. She kept trying to talk to me, to apologize, to negotiate. I responded with silence that felt heavier than words. When she was finally ready to leave, wheeling her suitcases across the marble foyer that had never truly been hers, she turned at the door one last time. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, the question coming out broken, barely a whisper. That's no longer my concern, I replied, and closed the door on 5 years of marriage and lies. Vanessa tried going to her parents first, showing up at their modest suburban home with her designer luggage and tear-streaked face. Her father, Robert, a stern man who'd worked construction for 30 years, took one look at her and shook his head. He'd never approved of her quitting her job to play housewife. Never liked how she'd changed after marrying into what she thought was money. You thought you married a millionaire so you could divorce him and take half, Robert said from his doorway, not inviting her inside. That's not love, Vanessa. That's greed. You made your bed with your choices. Now you'll lie in it, he concluded firmly. Her mother, Margaret, usually the more sympathetic parent, stood silent beside him. Even she couldn't find words to defend what Vanessa had done. The door closed with finality that echoed through the neighborhood. Vanessa crashed temporarily with Amanda, her former country club friend. But the arrangement lasted exactly 3 days. Word had spread through their social circle with the vicious efficiency of wildfire, through lawyers, through gossip networks, through the cruel whisper campaigns of the wealthy. Everyone knew Vanessa Hayes had tried to divorce her husband for millions and walked away with $500. The humiliation was absolute, public, and permanent. Amanda asked her to leave on a Saturday morning, her voice apologetic, but firm. People are talking, Vanessa. It's affecting my reputation. My husband's business associates are asking questions. I can't have that kind of scandal attached to my family, she explained uncomfortably. Country Club revoked her guest. Privileges immediately, a form letter delivered by certified mail explaining that her membership had been dependent on her marriage to a Hayes family member. Her former friends, women she'd brunched with and traveled with and shared secrets with, blocked her number with surgical precision. They couldn't risk association with someone who'd become a cautionary tale. Her Instagram followers, once 15,000 people who envied her seemingly perfect life, dropped to 4,000 within a week. The carefully curated photos of luxury vacations and designer purchases now looked like evidence of fraud. Comment sections filled with speculation and mockery. She made her account private, but the damage was done. Vanessa took a job at a department store in the mall where she'd once shopped without looking at price tags. Folding clothes for $14 an hour, taking orders from managers younger than her, standing on her feet for 8-hour shifts that left her exhausted and bitter. She rented a studio apartment in a part of town she would have mocked 5 years ago, the kind of place with thin walls and questionable plumbing and neighbors who worked multiple jobs just to survive. Sometimes, while running errands in her old neighborhood, she'd see women she used to know. Former friends shopping with their husbands, laughing over expensive lunches, living the life she'd thought was hers forever. They looked through her like she was invisible, erasing her from their world as completely as if she'd never existed. Meanwhile, Derek Sutton remained missing. The news coverage had been sporadic but persistent. Day 12 in the search for missing real estate investor Derek Sutton. Police have found no signs of foul play, but family and friends describe his disappearance as completely out of character. His black Maserati was discovered abandoned at a hiking trail 40 miles outside the city. Keys still in the ignition, but extensive searches have yielded no trace of Sutton himself. Vanessa tried calling the police twice, telling them about her relationship with Derek, suggesting they investigate further. But they treated her like what she was, a spurned woman grasping for relevance in a case that had already consumed hundreds of investigative hours. "We're following all leads." "Ma'am," Detective Morrison told her dismissively during their second conversation. "But unless you have specific evidence of foul play, there's not much more we can pursue," he added with professional detachment. She tried reaching out to me twice, once by email, once by showing up at my mother's company office. The email went unanswered, deleted without being read. The office visit ended with security escorting her from the building after she became hysterical in the lobby, screaming about justice and betrayal while executives watched from behind glass doors. I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment while house hunting, something I could actually afford with my own money. The space was small but honest. My name on the lease, my furniture, my choices. Catherine had offered to help, but I wanted to rebuild on my own terms, to prove I could create a life based on reality rather than illusion. At work, my promotion to Vice President of Development became official. The title came with real responsibility, real accomplishment, respect earned through competence rather than family connections. My mother took me to dinner to celebrate, and we toasted with wine I'd purchased myself, modest but satisfying. "You handled it perfectly," Catherine said, raising her glass in approval. "You taught me well," I replied gratefully. Neither of us mentioned Derek. Neither of us needed to. Some conversations exist in silence. Some truths live better in shadow. I received a final text from Vanessa's new number 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. "I hope you rot in hell for what you've done to me." I blocked the number without responding. Then I went to my closet and looked at a small cardboard box labeled insurance in my own handwriting. Inside, the prenuptial agreement with her careless signature, the divorce decree granting her $500, and something else, something I'd never need to use, but kept just in case anyone ever asked the wrong questions. The box went back on the high shelf, and I closed the closet door on the past. 6 months after the divorce, I built a new life on my own terms, brick by honest brick. Catherine decided to transfer the estate to my name, a gesture that surprised me with its timing and generosity. "You've earned it," she said simply when presenting me with the deed. "You handled everything with more wisdom than I gave you credit for." For the first time in my life, the 8,000-square-foot mansion was actually mine. My name on the deed. My choices reflected in every room I decided to keep or change. The independence felt better than any luxury I'd never actually owned, even though the luxury remained. Work flourished under the weight of genuine accomplishment. As Vice President of Development, I earned respect through competence rather than nepotism, and the satisfaction was worth more than any inherited wealth. I dated occasionally, careful, cautious encounters with women who knew from the first conversation that while I lived well, I'd earned it myself. The ones who stayed were different from Vanessa in every way that mattered. Better. Vanessa's trajectory had been the exact opposite, a steady descent into the life she'd once looked down upon. She still worked retail, folding clothes and taking orders from managers who barely noticed her existence. Her studio apartment was a universe away from marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Her social media presence had dwindled to near invisibility, her follower count below 1,000 strangers. I knew this because I checked occasionally, not out of love or concern, but from clinical curiosity. I wanted to understand what happened to people who tried to take what wasn't theirs, who built their happiness on lies and entitlement. Derek Sutton remained officially a cold case. His family had held a memorial service 4 months ago, an elegant affair at the country club where he'd met Vanessa. Nobody was ever recovered. The police concluded he likely met with foul play, but had left voluntarily first, a theory involving gambling debts and dangerous people. It was speculative. It was wrong. It was also convenient. I never heard from Dylan Murphy again after that one text. Clean. No traces. Consider us even. Some friendships exist in shadows. Some loyalties run deeper than law. Sometimes, late at night in my home office, I stood before the closet and looked at that cardboard box on the high shelf. Inside lay a USB drive, encrypted and password protected, containing the only evidence that could ever connect me to Derek's disappearance. Insurance I'd never need, but kept anyway. Catherine visited one evening in early spring, bringing wine and comfortable silence. We sat on the expansive patio overlooking manicured gardens. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Marrying her?" "Yes." "Ending it the way I did?" "No," I answered honestly. "And the other thing?" she pressed gently. "What other thing?" I replied innocently. Catherine nodded, understanding conversations that couldn't be spoken aloud. She knew her son. She knew what I was capable of when someone threatened what I valued. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking wine under stars that looked the same whether you owned the mansion beneath them or merely lived in its shadow. I thought about Vanessa. Broke and alone, wondering where her perfect plan went wrong. I thought about Derek, whose body would never surface. I thought about justice and consequences and the price people pay when they believe they can steal someone else's life, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no triumph, no regret. Just cold, empty clarity. People only love what they think they can take from you. When they discover there's nothing to take, they show you exactly who they always were underneath their beautiful masks. And when they can't take anything at all, they disappear. The house was finally mine, and that made all the difference. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.